I am talking to you all about the things that I wish I had known in my 20s. You guys, if you are in your 20s, this is the perfect episode for you. And even if you are beyond your 20s, you guys, you can take wisdom that you learn and you gain to quantum leap your reality and step into something that you never knew or thought was possible. And I'm going to help you get there with all of this information and knowledge that I am sharing with you today. So, if you are really enjoying this episode, please feel free to share the information with anyone that you know who could use it. Let them know about the Money Goddess podcast. And I also would love for you to take the time and leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe. I want you guys to stay tuned because I'm always releasing content every single week to make sure that I am supporting you all. You're my community, and I love you guys, and I really want to see everyone grow and thrive. So, here we go. We have three more things that I am sharing to help you in your 20s, and I'm going to get into a lot of details of things that I really truly wish I had known. So, I have shared with you all my background. Like, I came from an impoverished family. So, my third great grandmother was a slave in Heidelberg, Mississippi, and it wasn't like, we came up and we got better, right? As, oh, slavery's over, we're good. No, it was not like that. And it wasn't like that not just for my family, but everyone's family who, suffered and went through those things. And so what I learned from the generations as they progressed, truth be told, it didn't really feel like it got better. And I say that because, like, my mother, like, they had an outhouse. I want to be very transparent. My mother is only in her early 60s and she had an outhouse. Her mother didn't own a home. My mom was the first person in her family to own a home. My father actually dropped out of school in the 8th grade to help his family be able to eat. Okay. So this is where I come from. My dad did wind up going back to school, getting his GED and an associate's degree. But I'm sharing all of this because you don't have to come from the best family that has all of, the money, the wealth, the connections, right? You can use your everyday wisdom. Learn from people around you. This is going to propel you forward. If you want to thrive, you have to know that your background does not mean that you won't be able to be successful. And so the things that I am sharing with you is what I truly, truly should, I feel like, have known. If I had known it, I feel like I would be even further. But I know that these are lessons I'm supposed to share with someone, and it might be you. So I want you to get out your pen and paper if you haven't already, because this is going to be good advice that you might want to take and really digest on your own time. So the next thing that I am sharing with you to help thrive in your 20s is to focus on your health. And I'm talking every type of health that you have, mentally, physically, emotionally. Think about your relationships, your finances. But let me start off with your mental health. Now, as I mentioned, because I come from, a lineage of people who were in poverty, who had trauma, stress, all these things, I genuinely feel like mental health is the one thing that my family did not overcome. And it's something that I actually had to overcome. I remember when I was just starting off as a teacher, I taught in a charter school in an urban setting. And I was like, this is insane. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome in. So happy to have you. Thank you. I wasn't really like I didn't know the world like this, right? I thought that, we all go in and we do our best and we teach kids and we change the world. That was not everyone's ammo. And it stressed me out to the point to where I was having panic attacks. I was going through a lot, and you may be going through something in your life. So definitely don't feel like, this is just me telling you to go and get help. No, I had to get help for that first time in my life when I was, I think, 22, 23. You guys, listen. That was the best thing I could have done, because it wasn't just about learning how to mitigate my panic attacks. It was me understanding how this world works, and also any trauma that I had, like ancestral trauma. That's when I started to recognize the patterns where certain family members had mental health issues. And I also remember someone in my family that I was very close to saying to me, "Girl, you're not crazy. Why are you going to go get help?" Now, how many years ago was that? About 10 years ago. Now that person is coming to me for help. I was the one who changed this in my family because I chose to focus on my mental health. Now, some of the older ones, certain generations, they still don't want to go. That's fine. That's their business. But I know I did what I needed to do to set the tone and precedent for myself and my future. Now, when I have issues mentally, I know how to cope. I know how to work with others and let them know what I'm going through so that I can be able to get that support that I need. Right. And the next thing that I also feel like really helped me was the emotional health. Right. So when I understand my mental health, I can focus on regulating my emotions. And I did share this in another podcast episode, how I went through postpartum depression and anxiety. So my postpartum came mostly from my hormones being so out of whack, and my body is very sensitive to a lot of things. It wasn't just hormones. Like, my body is sensitive to almost everything. I'm just a sensitive soul. And so because of that, I had to work to regulate my emotions, right? I remember just getting mad about things and that used to would never bother me. And at the top of 2024, I've been doing this for a year and almost 3 months. EFT tapping will change your life. Emotional freedom technique is an opportunity for you to tap all of your meridian points on your body to help calm your nervous system. If you don't know about your nervous system, I recommend you look it up. I have plenty of videos on TikTok at I am JL Thomas. And today I did release some on my YouTube channel as well with EFT tapping. So make sure you subscribe or follow me to get that content and work on your nervous system. When I was doing that at first, the first 2 weeks, I stopped having cravings, and I was like, what? Because guess what? My family, ancestrally, and I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take care of my mental and emotional health, but a lot of them were big boned, not because they were just these greedy people, because they didn't regulate their emotions or understand their mental health. They were not able to get to a place where they could keep their bodies in a certain way because they were always stressed. It was always trauma. And that's why EFT helped me to calm down. I was no longer craving sugar. Okay. My responses to things were slowing down. Like, I was just really taking the time to think. I was able to put myself in a position. So those meridian points, it's the top of your head, the inside of your eyebrows, outside, under your eyes, under your nose, chin, collarbones, where your bra strap is if you are a woman, and your karate chops here on the sides of your hands. Tapping those, I still do that every day. You guys, I have literally changed my life and my mental health because of that. You can also do breath work, okay? That will help you regulate your emotions. You can also try somatic shaking. Somatic shaking is when you stand up and you just shake your body and do some deep breathing to help get everything out. And mind you, when you do EFT tapping or you do somatic shaking, your body is going to react. You could pass gas. You could yawn a lot. I typically yawn. That is getting those emotions out. Emotions is energy in motion. And if you don't learn how to get that out of your body, it gets trapped. And that's where the stress comes from. That's where the anger, frustration, all of those things. And again, it's not to say you won't have any emotions ever again, but it's to help you get through them, to deal with it, to process it. That's why it's so important that you invest in your mental health and your emotional health. Now, let's talk about physical. So, in the same way, we need to think about our diet and exercise. And I'm not just talking about a basic, oh, I should count my calories. Oh, I need to just go on one walk a week. Listen, I'm talking about true nutrition. Processed foods are hurting a lot of us more than we realize. We need fresh foods as much as possible. And look, I get it. Those things are more expensive, but it pays off in the long run. And there are ways that you can save. If you have to coupon, if you have to go to certain stores, you can do it. Okay? I have a high protein diet. I'm very open about my diet because it has helped me a lot. With my high protein diet, you're going to see me eat between 20 to 30 grams of protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when I tell you it helps me to stay full, and also, I have taken the time to get into Pilates. So I used to teach mat Pilates years ago, but now I'm doing reformer Pilates with resistance training. And you guys, I used to lift heavy weights in the gym. But the amount of muscle that I have with resistance training, I can pop my muscles out. I was getting a massage the other day and my quad, I felt the massage therapist moving my muscle. And when you build that muscle, it naturally helps your metabolism. It naturally burns fat. You guys, these things are important to do in your 20s. Now, I've always been a person who works out. I've really been more of like a cardio girly. Then I started doing weights, but I kind of bulk. And you have to, exercise sounds more simple than it really is. And what I mean by that is that you have to find what works for your body. Okay? Do what you feel will be right. When you think about your nutrition, I also recommend taking your supplements because sometimes, especially if you're eating processed foods, fast food, things like that, you're not getting all your vitamins and minerals for the day. Those things are important. If you want a list of my supplements, what I have is I have a link. I will probably share that down below on YouTube. If you are listening in to this, you guys feel free to message me on social media or you can email me shesworthy2017@gmail.com if you want my full supplements list. But that is going to help you get the most out of your body, right? If you notice you're always tired, you're not able to do things, you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, you guys, some of it has to do with your diet, your exercise, your supplements. Are you getting outside and getting that vitamin D to help you? I also take different supplements like ashwagandha to help calm me down. There are so many different things that you can try. And of course, talk to your medical and healthcare provider. I only share what works for me. This is not telling you that this is what you should do exactly. So, I've just shared for your 20s to focus in on your health, because if you don't use those 20s well, those 30s are going to hit you like a ton of bricks, okay? When I tell you, even in my 30s, especially after I had my son, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I took care of myself in my 20s, because I wouldn't be able to be where I am today if I hadn't." Even if you are older, it is never too late. You can take the time now to make a step. And it's just about getting 1% better every day. You don't have to be 20 steps ahead, just 1%. Okay, so here's the next thing that I wish I knew in my 20s. And I knew some of it, but I didn't know what I know now. Learn about relationships, and especially children. So I was in relationships in my late teens, or a relationship in my late teens and, early 20s, but I didn't really understand relationships the way that I do now. Um, and what I mean by that is, I don't think that I had a good example of relationships, because my father obviously passed away when I was 9 years old, and I shared that as well. But what I noticed is that even before he passed away, my mom and dad did not intentionally teach me how to be in a relationship. So I went to church, and my parents, they had me in church, and I appreciated that. And I learned so much. I learned about the Ephesians woman, the Ephesians man. But yeah, that's cute on Sunday. But on a day-to-day basis, that's not really how it goes. And I started to resent my spouse, because I felt like what I was taught, like, because I was relying on information that I learned in my teens, like this is how relationships go, but it wasn't really true. I think it was meant to be the foundation, and I thought it was going to be the foundation in the whole house, right? But that's not really it. So I feel like if I had known how relationship dynamics work, for example, if I would have known psychologically that you really marry your mother or your father, personality wise, I know for a fact I married a guy like my father. First of all, my husband and my father have a birthday that is one day apart. So that was weird. Of course, my husband and I are the same age, but it's just like that was a dynamic. My husband's grandmother and my mother have the same birthday. So it's just all of these things that I wish I would have known. And I really wish I would have thought about genetics and how that plays into things. I wish that whenever people talked about like sex in relationships, that they would have discussed further, not just, oh, you don't want to catch a disease, right? I wish that more people would have talked about what it does to you energetically. So if you're constantly having relations with someone who is an unclean person, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that rubs off on you as a woman. You are a womb carrier. Like, I wish those things would have been taught. And I think they were supposed to be taught, like when you go back in our history before, we were dealing with slavery and all of those things. Like when you look at the origins of, Africa and the Caribbean and different places, like all of that information was common knowledge. And that's why people did things a certain way, but it's not necessarily common knowledge now. And those things in relationships really matter. Like, I also wish that people would have told me that just because I am doing well myself in the relationship, that means the other person will too. That is not true. And relationships are not 50-50. They're not 100-100. There are so many things that I could say about this on relationships, but what I really want you to get out of this is that you really should get around some people with wisdom who can show you about relationships. You're not looking for anybody perfect because it doesn't exist. I remember following a very popular, couple, and they talked about their marriage, and they would say, oh, it's not perfect, but then they would like make all these perfect posts, right? You need to get around people that have been married. You might want to do somebody 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, because they're all going to be at different levels. My husband and I have been married for almost 5 years, and the first few years are the hardest years because you're really learning your person, especially if you all didn't live together before, or you weren't together for longer than 3 years or so. And even if you were together for 20 years before you got married, you are still learning a person because we evolve over time. And let's talk about children. I remember my mom used to say, like, woo, every time I asked her about children, because with me, she had a hard time. I know she had postpartum depression and anxiety, but she didn't acknowledge that. But I'm sure she did. And she had a C-section like I ended up having with my son. And that would have been nice to really know the details of, like, why was that difficult for you, right? That's one thing that I know me, and if I knew that knowledge, that having children changes your relationship. Of course, like, oh, they stay up all night. Oh, the labor's gonna hurt, right? We know those general things, but we don't know what can happen afterwards. We don't know those intimate details. Yes, we may see people saving for their kids, but we don't know those real struggles that they really have financially. So those are things that I would recommend before you even go into a relationship in your 20s, or you even decide to get married or whatever. Really do a deep dive on relationships, and it may even be your own relationship where you say, let's take a pause because I really want to reevaluate things. I wish communication was a thing too for men, because what I have found is in most relationships with a male and a female, the male has trouble communicating and expressing his emotions. Not every male, but that can be difficult. I've had that for almost all of my friends with the best men in the world, right? They still kind of have that disconnect, especially if they are a person of color. Those people are typically less likely to be expressive if they're men, because of the hardships of our, whether it's our ethnicities or demographics. We, like, men are typically told, don't cry, like, don't express yourself, you're being a woman if you do that, when you're really just being a human. And so that takes into the dynamic of your relationship, and that's where problems come in, because communication is the life force energy of a relationship. And I know some people think, well, read the room, but if the room is not giving you anything to read, how can we do that? So I would honestly recommend, so I have a couple recommendations. My friend Isabel Palacios, I think, is a really good person to learn from. I probably will link her course that I took, The Goddess Reset. That was a very impactful course for me because I learned how to be more feminine and receptive to my spouse, and that was definitely helpful. I really took the course about 3 or 4 times because I kind of do it almost every year. So I will be happy to share that with you all. Now I want to go over Whew, because that was a lot about children and relationships. I didn't think I was going to talk that much about that, but it's something. I'm telling you, you know. But let's go to the last thing. Building your self-esteem and confidence. Listen, that is a lifelong journey. Now, but if you have it earlier in your 20s, you'll make less mistakes. Let me tell you why, because you won't settle. You won't take the first thing that's given to you. You will really sit down and evaluate if something is truly for you. And you will think, okay, is this worthy of my time and of my energy? When you have a lower self-esteem, you are more likely to put yourself in situations that you may regret later on in life. I especially have found this with women. Now, men, in my opinion, men are typically more confident, even if it's just an exterior confidence, right? Because of like the macho man, you know? So they may do that. Now, internally, they may not be the most confident, but that external facade kind of gets them places. Versus with a woman, if she doesn't have the external or the internal, she is typically going to run away from good opportunities and go straight into whatever she thinks she can get the easiest. And so that's something that I really want you to think about in your 20s. So understand your innate worth and value. So internally, you have worth. Internally, you have value. From the moment you were conceived, you had it. And there's nothing that you can do to take that away. You are still valuable because you are. You are God's creation. And when you know that, you can move in a way that doesn't say, I am desperate. I will take whatever you have. I will give whatever I can to get it. Right? Now, I also want you to recognize what you bring to the world. Now, again, you already have worth, even if you didn't bring anything. But then I want you to think about, what do I bring? What do I do really well? Who do I help so naturally? You bring something to the table that nobody else can. No one else can be you. No one else can smile the way you do, or they can't speak the way you do, walk the way that you do. They can't think the way that you do. That's of value. And that is going to help you go into, as I mentioned earlier, a certain purpose. And you will be able to do things so unique. And people are going to want to be a part of that because the way you do things is just so different. And that's going to, when you're polarizing, you're magnetic. And I've seen that in my own life. I don't do hardly anything the way people do. I am not traditional as most people are. And when I tell you, that makes me so attractive, even to my spouse, it makes me attractive because I'm not willing to be just like everyone else. And when you have that confidence and that self-esteem, it's going to help you to do that. So in order to build more, I want you to do a couple things. Heal from your childhood wounds, because we all have them in some sense, whether it is our parents maybe that hurt us, if someone outside of your family or your extended family. We all have things that happen to us. You know, I'm not exempt from that. None of us are. And even if you had the perfect childhood, something could have happened where you didn't feel loved or you didn't feel like you got the attention that you deserved. I want you to focus on healing those, and that will help you to break free from your insecurities. When you have insecurities that you carry around or even these wounds, you are more likely not going to have the success that you want because you're holding on to something you were not meant to carry. And so I want you to be honest with yourself and look deep within and say, you know what? I'm going to choose to let this go. And the more time and energy that you work on this, it will get easier and easier. You guys, I have poured my heart out in this episode because those 20s are not easy, but they are the most pivotal times in your life. And if I would not have focused in during my 20s, y'all, I would not be here. You guys, I started this podcast when I was 25, going on 26. Now I get paid to do this. Even in my businesses, I mean, I literally like get paid to do minimal. It's minimal now, but it wasn't at first in my 20s because I had to work to build the skill sets. So now it's easy, right? But I put in that work. And yes, there are things that I just shared with you I wish I had known. But now you know. And now you can go further than me. And that's all that I would